Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Harney. I'm the founder of Keeping Current Matters, and I'm introducing you to this morning's deep dive. Every single Monday morning, we do a deep dive where we take one subject and we really get into it so that we get a deep dive on that subject. And today we want to talk about a way that you can make a lot of money in 2024. We do believe very strongly that the market's coming back, interest rates are coming down. They're bouncing at the bottom of 7. They might hit into 6 by the end of the year, hopefully by the very beginning of next year. And I think that when 6 is the first number, even if it's 6.99, it's going to open up a flood of business. And you have to be prepared for that flood of business coming at you. All right. And I think that one of the best ways to prepare for that are FSBOs and expireds. All right. What you want to do is whenever any store, unless you have a business, you have a store, whenever any store knows there's going to be a rush of customers coming in, what do they want to make sure? Their shelves are full. All right. And what you want to make sure right now, because there is a rush of business about to come to you, what you want to make sure your shelves are full. And what is it that you sell? You sell homes. So you want to have as many listings, a real good sellable inventory of homes for this rush of business about to come to you. And maybe the two best ways to do that right now, this time of year, are FSBOs and expireds. So let's get started on that. All right. Again, FSBOs and expireds in the new year. As we start every deep dive off with, most agents know what's happening. Good agents understand what's happening. Great agents can explain what's happening. And what I want to do right now is not get you to be able to explain this to a buyer or seller, though some aspects of it you will. What I want you to do is really, I want you to know it so well that you can explain it to another agent. All right? That you understand how important doing FSBOs and expireds are this time of year. So let's first jump to the for sale by owner side of it. All right, and we're going to get a lot of our data, not all of our data, but a lot of our data from the recent release, just recently released, buyer and seller profile that was released by the National Association of Realtors. So this is from their survey, which is done in the middle of the year. So it's from June 2023 backwards to July of 2022, the most recent data available. And what we see, ladies and gentlemen, is FSBOs as a percentage of all homes has been going down since 1981. And the interesting thing is last year it ticked up. It had gone down to 7 from 8. Then it ticked up to 10% of all homes last year, which was a little bit surprising to a lot of people. But it's back down to 7% this year. So it's not a big swath of inventory that is actually completed to sell. That doesn't mean how many people are FSBOing. It means how many FSBOs actually sold. All right. So 93% of all the homes sold are not for sale by owners. And that's important that we know that when we're talking to for sale by owner. The other thing that we have to realize is more than half, 57% of FSBO sellers knew the buyer of the home. What does that mean? Well, very simply, ladies and gentlemen, it means this. You know, they were at their house of worship. They bumped into someone there, you know, one of the other congregants, and they turned around and they talked about selling a house. And the other person said, well, my daughter's thinking about buying a house. Maybe she should come over and take a look. So some of those houses came on the market before they were really on the market. All right. They actually were sold before they were officially placed on the market. And we really don't have a shot at those, you know, but 57% of that were people that just knew someone that was looking to buy a house and they went ahead and sold it. Now, the reason that number is important, unless the FSBO that you're talking to knows someone's going to buy the house, they don't have a great chance of selling that house. Because if only 7% of all the houses sell are FSBOs, and almost 60% of those knew the buyer before they, you know, sold the house, then what winds up taking place is a minuscule number, all right, about 3%, that are actually successful putting their house on the market without having a buyer already and actually getting the house sold. Locations of homes that are sold by FSBO. Now, this is an important graph for a couple of different reasons. Number one is I want you to understand that in small towns and rural areas, that's where a lot of for sale by owners are. Now, there's two reasons for that. Number one is probably a little bit more neighborly, so they will talk to their neighbors about selling their home, and that means that they'll have a better chance of someone saying, I'm thinking about buying a house. Let me come over and take a look. before it ever officially gets to market. All right. The other thing I want you to understand, we do not share this graph because we don't think it's a fair graph. NAR does tell us what's the difference between a FSBO selling as far as money is concerned, the average price of a FSBO versus the average price or median price of a non-FSBO. And the disparity is gigantic, over $100,000. Ladies and gentlemen, two things. That's not fair. Though it's true, it doesn't really reflect what's actually taking place in the market. Agents don't get $100,000 more for your house because you list with an agent. And that's kind of, if you put that graph out there, that's what you're kind of saying. And I think that most sellers, most buyers, most consumers will say, well, that's not true. That's make-believe. So I really don't believe in sharing that information with the public. Number one is I don't think they're going to believe it. And number two, it's a little bit not 100% kosher in the way we're explaining that. Okay. And the reason I bring that up now is in small towns and rural areas, that's where a lot of FSBOs sell. And again, for the reason is they probably know more people. There's probably less realtors in those marketplaces. So of course, that in the small towns and rural areas, what is also we going to know about the price in most cases? They're going to be less expensive. So if most FSBOs sell and the most or the least expensive places to purchase, then of course the FSBO, the median price of a FSBO is going to be less than the median price of a house represented by a realtor, which are in urban and resort areas and subdivisions. All right. So it's very, very important that we understand that a lot of the homes that are sold by FSBO are in rural areas and are in small towns. Okay. Next, the most important reason for them to they sold it to a relative, friend, or neighbor. 36% here sold it to a relative, friend, or neighbor. Not did they just know the person. They were a relative, friend, or neighbor. All right. The second reason, did not want to pay a commission or fee. We get that. Not everyone wants to pay a commission or fee, and that's a reason that some people will try to FSBO. Buyer contacted seller directly. So the buyer was in touch with the seller without a real estate even being involved. Seller has real estate license. I'm not even sure if we should consider that a FSBO. If the seller has a real estate license, I think that was sold by a realtor. All right, it just they didn't put it on the market the way they would normally put it on the market, perhaps. All right, and I really don't understand that because I do believe that if we do buy or sell a house, we should use a realtor because if we believe in that third-party representation, if we sell that, then we should do that. Do not want to deal with an agent, and I get that. Sometimes there are some agents you don't want to deal with. All right, so there's a percentage of agents in the industry that give the whole industry, bad reputation, and because that reputation has spread because of those few bad eggs. All right, some people say I don't want to deal with any realtor, and then 2% is other. So the vast majority of them, if we look at the first three categories, they sold it to somebody that was a relative, friend, or neighbor, or the seller contacted them directly, or they just didn't want to pay a commission. The most difficult task, all right, for FSBOs, 15%. Now, the 50% is all the way on the right saying, I didn't really have any problem. But if we take a look at where they were challenges, 50%, the highest percentage, more than double any other, is getting the price right. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand that getting the price right is crucial. Because I do believe that there are some sellers that undervalue their home because they don't know how to price it right. They don't know how to stage it. They don't know how to promote it and market it appropriately. And therefore, they get less money. So we can take care of all the hassles and all the work. And really the difference between what they're going to net and what we're going to get, we don't have exact numbers on that. There's not been studies done on that. But and I know that if a home is priced right, if it's staged properly, if it's promoted properly, if it's marketed properly, it's going to get a better price than if those things didn't take place. And we have to explain our value proposition there. We're getting the price right, selling within a certain length of time, understanding and performing the paperwork, helping buyers obtain financing, having enough time to devote to all aspects of the sale, prepare or fixing up the home for sale, attracting potential buyers, and other. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, what are the 5 things the seller needs? They need to get the house sold. They need to get the best price possible for the home. They need to make sure that they are working within a certain timeline to get that house sold. They want you to remove all the hassles, and they want you to time the closing of this house with the closing of the new house they're purchasing or the new lease they're taking if they're renting. All of that stuff is what sellers need from us. FSBOs really strive for the same thing, and those are what they consider the most difficult task. So when we're dealing with sellers that are considering FSBOing, let's make sure we bring this up. We can help them get the right price. We can make sure that we get the timing right, that they sell within a certain period of time. We understand the paperwork. We'll help them through that process. We'll help their buyers get financing. As a matter of fact, we'll get them pre-approved, all right, before we even show them the house. Having enough time to devote to all aspects of the sale. We spend full time devoting ourselves to all aspects of the sale. Preparing and fixing up the home for sale. Whether you're doing formal staging or whether you're just helping the seller realize that you love the fact that their son painted his bedroom all black, but that ain't going to play on the sale. So what we need to do is go in there and just put a fresh coat of paint on those walls. All right, attracting potential buyers. That's what we do for a living. All right. So the things that the FSBO finds most difficult are exactly what we do, and we should make sure are in every one of our listing presentations. Because remember, even when we're on a listing presentation, in the back of that seller's mind is the option of for sale by owning. I personally would bring it up to the seller. You might even consider for sale by owning. Let me tell you what some of the challenges of that would be if you decide to go that way. So it's really, really important that we know what the challenges are so we can let them know that those are exactly the things we can handle for them. The number of times the asking price is reduced our home sold by a FSBO. None, 81% of the time. Well, of course, it's very high. If the vast majority is selling to friend, family, or neighbor, or somebody they know, a coworker or something like that, well, they set the price, they came over and they did the price. If they were looking for a higher price and the buyer came over and they settled on the price, they're not considering that a price reduction. They're considering that's what they turned, because the house was never really for sale at a certain price. They consider whatever they sold the house for as the price they wanted. So there's no doubt in my mind that 81% believe that there was no price reduction because they sold it before the house was even on the market. So whatever price they sold it for was the price they wanted. Let's take a look again at that 7%, because this is pretty interesting to me. The ways that it can break down through a real estate broker, which is the light blue line across the top, the directly from a builder or builder's agent, the dark blue line across the bottom there. All right, so what winds up taking place, these are houses that were purchased. And we can see that what winds up taking place is the purchasing, they go through an agent. So if they're looking to make sure they attract the buyer, what we have is 89% of all the buyers are going to use us, not for choosing for sale by owner. As a matter of fact, if we take a look at it of all the buyers, now 7% of the house is sold by owner, but if we take a look at it, how many buyers actually bought directly from the previous owner, according from the buyer survey, that's down to 5%. So what we're looking at here, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you're a FSBO looking to attract a buyer, 89%, almost 9 out of 10 buyers buy it from us. And then there is another 6%, which brings up to 95%, that buy from the builder. All right, directly from a builder or a builder's agent. So what we're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is the number of buyers to actually buy directly from a homeowner is minuscule. And the other thing that was pretty interesting to me is right after the great financial crisis, the GFC in the mid-2000s, that number jumped up pretty dramatically. So if we're talking to FSBOs, we want to make sure we let them know, if you're looking to attract buyers, we have the buyers already. Another thing is they were talking about asking price of the home sold. How FSBO seller determined that. They looked at recent homes sold in the area. Now, if they're looking at a recent home sold, the chances of them being able to go inside that house and fairly compare that house to theirs, it's questionable to me at best. Online home evaluation tools. We know they're a valuable tool. We also know they're very inaccurate. I personally own a summer home on a lake. My summer home is valued by the valuation tools at about $600,000. I've had two recent appraisals done for two different reasons, and both appraisals, formal appraisals, came in at over $2 million. Well, how could the house be worth over $2 million and the valuation has it at $600,000? Well, they're evaluating all the houses in my area. They're not taking into consideration mine happens to be on the lake with 750 feet, linear feet on the lake. Of course, that changes it. So home valuation systems, though they are a decent tool, they're not always accurate. And then I like this one the best. Well, they determine the price based on how much profit they want. So very obviously, ladies and gentlemen, it's extremely important that we understand that and we work with them on that. They're not pricing the house correctly. If you decide, this is from NerdWallet, if you decide to go to the sale by owner route, you can do your own comps or use an online home value estimator to get a general idea of the value of your home. But you shouldn't take what you find on a home valuation tool as gospel, as it is only an estimate and could be based on incomplete data. Exactly what I just said to you. And we're not quoting NAR here. We're not quoting, a real estate company here. We're quoting a consumer advocate company, NerdWallet. All right? So what winds up taking place is even they are saying, if you're a FSBO using some of the home valuation systems, that might not be the best way to go. And from Realtor.com, potential sellers will want to consider the landscape for new construction housing in their markets and any implications for pricing and marketing before listing their home for sale. What does that mean? Very simply, ladies and gentlemen, if they're looking at just the houses like theirs in their market as competition, they're wrong right now. New construction is competition to any resale home. Now, there was a time that new construction only made up a little bit more than 10% of all the homes sold. So it wasn't a big component of all homes sold. So it became less important what new houses were selling for. But if we look at the data, historically, it's between 12 and 15%, just over 10%. Right now, today, 30 to 35%, depending on the area you're in, 30 to 35% of all homes sold are new construction. Now, that might not weigh in an appraisal price, but it's definitely going to weigh in a buyer's consideration. So if they're not taking that new construction into consideration when they're pricing their house, they're making a mistake. And we should let them know that. We should help them understand why using a realtor makes the most sense. And one of the things I think about the most always, ladies and gentlemen, is the negotiation we do for them. We might be able to save them our entire commission just based on the negotiation we do. We have to negotiate with the buyer to get the price right. Sometimes we have to negotiate with the buyer's agent. We might have to negotiate with the buyer's attorney if there is an attorney. The home inspection report, when that comes in, and that we all know that could be from a couple of dollars to a couple of $1,000 to tens of thousands of dollars. Who's going to negotiate that? The termite report. Who's going to negotiate what is really needed to be done there? Do we have to do everything the termite company said? Is that mandatory? And if it is mandatory, who's going to pay for that? Is that going to be the seller's expense? Is that going to be the buyer's expense? Or are we going to try to work it out in some sort of 50-50 deal? That's a negotiation. Sometimes we have to negotiate with the buyer's lender. Sometimes the appraisal report comes in short. The homeowner doesn't even consider that. Well, we should let them know that could happen, especially in a market where, pricing is being questioned more than it has been. A couple of years ago, that you could go ahead and get an appraisal on a house that's sold, because by the time the appraisal came in, the house was worth 5% more or 10% more. Houses were appreciating so rapidly. The appraisal reports are going to be much tighter now. Sometimes there's some questions in the title report. Sometimes if they have a problem with a CO on the property, we might have to negotiate with the town and municipality. And many of you have probably already had the experience that in order to keep your deal together, you had to make sure you kept the buyer's deal together. So we might have to negotiate with the buyer's buyer. And this is just some of the people you have to negotiate with. And we have to let people know that if we're going to go ahead and prospect for sale by owners. And I also, as I mentioned before, think that if we're on an expired listing or any listing presentation, we should bring up the concept of for sale by owner. I am so confident that after we explain the challenges of doing a for sale by owner, the vast majority of homeowners are not going to pick that option. First of all, the vast majority are already not picking that option without any explanation from us. But if we sit in a listing and let them know that, at least we take that out of their mind when we leave. Let's let them know how valuable, what our values are, all right, or what our value proposition, I should say is. Well, the housing market had limited inventory and home prices were in flux. Buyers and sellers both increased their use of real estate agents. We just said that. Buyers wanted an expert to help them find the right home and conduct negotiations. Sellers also relied on real estate agents, brokers to price their home competitively and market it to potential buyers. Now, there's a section in there. Buyers wanted an expert to help them find the right home and conduct negotiations. The buyers are looking for an agent that will help them negotiate the price. The seller should have that same representation. Now let's talk about the expired listings, yours and theirs. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to fill your listing bucket of sellable listings, the first listings I want you to go after are your own. The listings that are about to expire. Your listings that are about to expire. You can go there, you don't have to wait for the expiration date. You can go there right now. It's important that you do. Now, I get it. That's not an easy conversation. You set a price when you originally were on the listing, and now you have to tell them that we might have to go ahead and adjust that price. Because if your house is not sold in the last 60 days, you need to adjust that price, ladies and gentlemen. There's no question about that. Maybe you want to push it to 90 days. If it hasn't sold in 90 days, that house definitely, there's something that's preventing that house from selling. And you promised those people that you would tell them the truth. All right? When you took the listing, you promised you would tell them the truth, and you promised them that you would do everything in your power to get that house sold. Now, I get sitting with them right now and having a tough conversation about price adjustment is not easy. But any agent can deliver good news. A great agent can deliver tough news. And I get that that's tough news. But I want you to understand that it's necessary right now. We know they want to sell the house. It's already on the market. We know they would rather use you as their listing agent because they already listed with you. You promised them that you would do everything in your power to get the house sold, and you promised them that you would always tell them the truth. It's time to live up to those promises. You have to sit down with them, set an appointment. Don't do this over the phone. Don't text them this. Sit down and talk to them and say, listen, we try to get you the highest possible price we possibly can. That price isn't right for this market. We have to go ahead and make an adjustment. Again, not an easy conversation, but it's a conversation that you must have if you're going to keep your promises that you made to them when you originally took the listing. Let's get that house price right. And I promise you, when the house sells, if they want the house to sell, if they don't really care whether the house sells, they might not adjust the price, no matter what you do. But if they adjust the price because they want the house sold and the house sells, they'll thank you for being honest with them. What's one of the biggest complaints that expireds have? My agent set the price, not me. He didn't tell me the truth. She didn't tell me the truth. They didn't tell me the truth. Don't be one of those agents that sellers are talking about. Be the honest agent. Now, let's talk about other people's expired listings. Obviously, you have to wait until they expire. We have a special guide, 3 steps to winning expired listings. I want to make sure that, and we'll tell you how to get that guide in a second. I want to make sure that everyone gets that guide, reads that guide, and understands. Because there's going to be a ton of expired listings at the end of this year. In a couple of weeks, there's going to be a ton of expired listings. How do I know that? Because every year, the number one day for expired listings is December 31st. In my 35 years in the business, the biggest day for expires, every one of those 35 years was December 31st. Why? Because agents have a tendency in the middle to the last quarter of the year saying, let's list it to the end of the year. That's an easy thing for an agent to say. It's an easy thing for a seller to accept. The second biggest day for expires is December 30th. And that's because there's a whole ton of agents that don't know they're 31 days in December. Now, I'm giggling because that's half joke. The reason it's funny is because it's also true. So at the end of this, in another couple of weeks, there's going to be a ton of business sitting at the door waiting for you that you have to go get. Now, how do we do that? Let's break down the guide a little bit. Number one, you have to take the 3 steps to winning expired listing. Master the seller's psychology. Number one, review the 3 factors that have prevented the house from selling. Understand the seller's options. Rationalization. Ladies and gentlemen, understand that there's going to be a part of them on an expired list and say, it wasn't meant to be. Talk about their dream. Don't let them fall into it wasn't meant to be and they'll take the house off the market. Talk about why they originally sold the house. Reaction formation. And again, these are covered in depth in the guide. Reaction formation. They're going to take it out on you. All right. They're going to be like, I don't care. And you know, and all of that. Don't worry about that. They're going to form a reaction that you're not going to understand 100%. And then that reaction formation could come into displacement where they're blaming outright you because, well, you didn't bring a buyer. You didn't sell the house. Do I always explain that? Sometimes the worker yells at the boss yells at the worker yells at the spouse yells at the kids kick the dog bites the cat, and the cat eats the goldfish. On some expireds, you're going to be the goldfish. You're going to be the one taking the beating. You're going to be taking the displacement. You're going to be taking that seller's anger of their original agent. They're going to place that on you because they can't find their original agent. That's okay. Let them vent. And we teach you how to do that in a guide, as I mentioned. 3 things that will stop a house from selling. You first of all, prevent it is if you don't have proper access, if you're not making it look good, and if the pricing isn't compelling. All right. If that house is expired, one of those 3 things are off. Most times it's the pricing. Because even if the house doesn't have good access, and even if the house doesn't look good, you can handle that with pricing. So get there and be strong with them with pricing. And understand they have 4 options. They could relist with their current agent. They could take the house off the market. And again, they might think that rationalization wasn't meant to be. They could list the house for sale by owner. That's why I think it's important that you understand for sale by owner, because when you're doing expires, they might bring that up to you. All right. And they relist with a real estate agent. Obviously, if they relist with their current agent, just walk away from that. Wish them luck, wish the other agent luck. But if they're thinking about taking a house off the market, rekindle the dream that they originally put it on the market. If they're thinking of for sale by owner, go through what we just went through with you, the challenges of doing a for sale by owner. Then obviously the last option, make sure you bring a listing with you. I'm not going to go through each one of these as we're running out of time, but here's 5 reasons to hire a real estate agent. They help with disclosures. We're well-versed in real estate experience with the entire sales process. We act as a buffer in negotiations. We simply and effectively handle today's market decisions. And we help you price the house right. Exactly what FSBOs said they got wrong. They needed the most help with. That's what we do. If you're a member, a KCM member, all you need to do is go to mykcm.com, go to expert guides and templates at the training center, and then just go to 3 steps to winning expireds. If you're not a member, all right, you can go to www.trykcm.com/expires, and you can get the same book, and you should. Also, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know we believe very, very, very strongly in doing video promotion. KCM is very strong in that. So if you're a video member with the right membership, you have access to Real Talk. I want you to make sure that you're doing a Real Talk video on this and get it out for this holiday season. The biggest hurdles of selling your house on your own. There are going to be some people that on January 1st, they're going to join the gym, they're going to go on a diet, and they're going to put their house up for sale. Starts the new year, let's go. Now, all those expiring on the 31st. If no agent goes, sees them, they might decide to for sale by owner. Get this video out right now. It breaks down why they should not do that. Make the video. We make it nice and simple. We give you the script. We give you the graphics. We give you everything you need. And go ahead and make the video. And if there's anybody out there saying, well, I'm not sure if I'm pretty enough for a video. I'm not sure I look good enough. I'm not sure. I'm on video. I do a video every Monday morning. If I could go on video with this face, you can do a video too. Last thing, next week, there's a lot of confusion about institutional investors. As a matter of fact, there's a bill in front of Congress that will outlaw big corporations from buying any home in America. And there are many Americans that think that's the greatest thing in the history of the world. Well, there's a couple of challenges. Number one is, what are the ramifications of that? Student housing, for one. All right. And secondly, are we misunderstanding the number of institutional investors? We're going to break that down for you, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of misinformation out there that during a political year is becoming a political football. So you're going to get a ton of questions about this from buyers and sellers and your neighbors and your friends and your family. Next week, we're going to make sure you have all the answers to all those questions. We're going to break it down step by step on next Monday's deep dive to make sure that you know exactly what's happening with institutional investors. And I think many of you are going to be surprised with what we deliver next Monday. Looking forward to seeing you there. As I say at the end of each deep dive, you gave me a half hour of your life. I hope we gave you a great return on your investment. Thank you for being here.